the laughter hit before the gavel did. Not loud, just a stifled snort from somewhere behind the plaintiff's table, sharp enough to slice through the hush of the courtroom. Dorothy Hamilton didn't turn her head. She didn't need to. She knew her daughter's laugh anywhere. Patricia's voice used to sound like music in this very courthouse, back when Dorothy would bring her here after school, teaching her to respect the law, the truth, herself. Now that same voice was dripping with ridicule. Dorothy smoothed the front of her navy dress and stepped to the defense table, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. Her hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Let them look. Let them whisper about the widow with the old handbag who thought she could represent herself. She had learned long ago that people only laugh when they're afraid of what they don't understand. Across the room, Patricia and her husband Michael leaned close, whispering. Their lawyer, James Morrison, was already performing for the judge, all expensive charm and false concern. He kept calling her Mom in his filings, as if that word might soften the cruelty of accusing her of mental incompetence. Dorothy's gaze drifted to the judge's bench. Margaret Walsh. The name was familiar, though it took a moment to place it. The years had changed them both, Margaret's hair now silver, Dorothy's once quick smile replaced by calm reserve, but something in her eyes sparked recognition. The bailiff called the court to order. Dorothy rose. The weight of 6 months pressed on her shoulders, the funeral, the will, the betrayal, all reduced to this single question: was she still of sound mind? Patricia's perfume drifted across the aisle, sweet and synthetic, like the lies that had brought them here. Dorothy felt her chest tighten, but not from fear. From memory. Robert's voice echoed faintly in her mind, the way it had the night before he died: "They'll come for you, Dot. Promise me you won't let them win." She straightened her posture, eyes forward, tone steady as the judge began to speak. Let them see what they think is an old woman defending herself. Let them laugh. Because by the time this day was over, they'd remember that laughter the way people remember thunder right before the lightning hits. The smell of the courthouse coffee lingered in the hallway as Dorothy waited for the next recess to end. Every sound, the shuffle of papers, the squeak of shoes, the cough from the clerk, felt magnified, like the building itself was listening. She had sat in these corridors decades ago, on the other side of the law, watching juries file in and out. Back then, her voice could turn a case with a single objection. Now, her silence was her weapon. Patricia stood a few yards away, scrolling on her phone, ignoring her mother as if she were a stranger. Her red blazer was too bright, her smile too sharp when Michael leaned close to whisper something smug. Dorothy wondered when her daughter had started dressing like armor. Maybe it had been after the wedding. Maybe after the money became real. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was the disbelief that Patricia truly thought she needed protecting from her own mind. That she'd filed for guardianship, signed those papers, and called her confused. Dorothy had read every word. The cruelty was hidden behind polite phrasing, but it was there. The respondent lacks capacity to manage her estate or personal affairs. She took a slow breath, her eyes tracing the gold seal on the summons folded inside her purse. It wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her. Just the most personal. The door to the courtroom opened again. A reporter with a camera slipped inside, nodding at Patricia. Of course she'd invited the press, nothing like public humiliation to speed things along. Dorothy caught the flicker of satisfaction on her daughter's face and felt a familiar calm spread through her, the kind that came before she dismantled a hostile witness. She could end this now. She had the documents in her briefcase, the old bar certificate, the case summaries, proof of everything she once was. But not yet. Let them underestimate her a little longer. Let Patricia think she'd won the opening round. Dorothy rose when the bailiff called everyone back. The quiet inside her had changed. It wasn't fear. It was preparation, the precise kind that used to precede a verdict. By the time she reached her seat, even the air felt different. Something was coming, and Dorothy Hamilton, widow, mother, and former attorney, was finally ready to let it. The cross-examination should have been routine. Patricia's lawyer had rehearsed it all morning, his tone dripping with condescension as he asked Dorothy to recall the date of her husband's death, the last check she'd written, the name of the neighbor who helped with groceries. Each question carried the same message, see? She's slipping. Dorothy answered quietly, each word deliberate. She didn't rush. She didn't fidget. The courtroom grew still as her memory proved sharper than anyone expected. But when Morrison produced the medical report, signed by Patricia's chosen psychiatrist, her chest tightened. "Mrs. Hamilton," he said, feigning pity, "you were diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment last year, correct?" Patricia folded her arms, her expression triumphant. The document waved like a victory flag. Dorothy took the page from his hand, her eyes scanning it. "This isn't my doctor," she said. "Your daughter arranged the evaluation," Morrison replied smoothly. "She was worried for your well-being." The words landed heavy. Dorothy stared at Patricia. For the first time, Patricia looked unsure. Michael avoided her gaze. Dorothy understood then, it wasn't about protection. It never was. They'd fabricated the report. The judge leaned forward. "Do you have counsel, Mrs. Hamilton?" Dorothy hesitated. A beat too long. Then something inside her, the part she'd kept buried since Robert's death, rose to the surface. "No, Your Honor," she said softly. "But I was counsel once." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Morrison laughed, dismissive. "With respect, Your Honor, Mrs. Hamilton is confused." Dorothy opened her briefcase and laid a worn leather folder on the table. Her fingers slid out a single page, yellowed but crisp, Certificate of Admission to the Massachusetts Bar. "I earned this in 1982, she said, her voice steady. "Practiced for over 20 years before I chose to step back. I remember every rule of evidence. Every tactic. And every lie when I hear one." The room froze. Even Patricia stopped breathing. Dorothy turned toward her daughter, eyes soft but unyielding. "You should have asked me who I was before you tried to decide who I wasn't." The judge's gavel struck once, sharp as thunder. The laughter from earlier was gone now. Only silence remained, heavy and electric, as the tide finally began to turn. The air in the courtroom had changed. Reporters leaned forward. The judge watched closely, curiosity replacing doubt. Dorothy stood taller, but inside, her heart pounded like it hadn't in years. Every part of her training returned, the rhythm of questioning, the precision of phrasing, but this time it wasn't about winning a case. It was about reclaiming her life from the people she loved most. Morrison tried to recover his swagger. "With respect, Your Honor, this revelation doesn't change the fact that Mrs. Hamilton is emotionally unstable." "Even attorneys can," Dorothy cut him off, calm but firm. "Mr. Morrison, please don't speak about mental stability while presenting forged documents." She slid another paper toward him, a copy of the original medical file, notarized and signed by her real physician. "Dr. Singh's evaluation. No cognitive impairment. Perhaps you should check your sources before you build your arguments on them." The lawyer blanched. The judge lifted the page, her expression unreadable. Dorothy turned her gaze to Patricia. For a moment, time folded. She didn't see the adult in designer clothes and resentment, she saw the little girl who used to sneak downstairs to watch her mother write briefs at midnight, fascinated by the quiet click of the typewriter keys. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" Dorothy asked softly. "Why turn this into war?" Patricia's jaw tightened. "Because you never let anyone in, Mom. You controlled everything. Even Dad." The words hit like a slap. For the first time, Dorothy had no ready answer. Maybe there was truth there, buried under years of distance and pride. The judge cleared her throat. "Mrs. Hamilton, do you wish to continue representing yourself?" Dorothy hesitated, eyes flicking to her daughter. "Yes, Your Honor. But not to prove I'm competent. To prove I'm still her mother." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Patricia's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. The judge nodded slowly. Then continue. Dorothy inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Every suppressed emotion, grief, anger, love, pushed against her composure. She could feel Robert beside her, the ghost of his encouragement echoing in her mind. She turned back to the bench. Then I'll begin with the truth, she said. And I won't stop until it's all on record. The trial, and everything between them, had only just begun. Dorothy stood before the witness stand, a single light spilling across her face. The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the air vents. Her palms were dry now. Fear had burned itself out, leaving only focus, clear, cold, absolute. She held up a series of bank statements. These transfers, she said, were made from my late husband's account 2 weeks before his death. To an offshore account in Michael Turner's name. My son-in-law. Michael's face drained of color. Patricia stiffened. Dorothy didn't look at her. She handed the evidence to the clerk. My husband trusted him to manage a small foundation. That trust was broken. And when I discovered the missing funds, suddenly I was declared incompetent. The judge's eyes sharpened. Morrison tried to object, but Dorothy's tone sliced through. You'll find signatures, mine, on those transfers. Forgeries. Perfect ones. The kind someone could make with access to family documents. Patricia's voice cracked. Mom, that's not true. Michael just, stop. Dorothy turned toward her, her expression soft but tired. You wanted to believe him because it was easier than facing what he really was. I understand that. I did the same with your father for years. The weight of that admission hung heavy. For a moment, the courtroom disappeared. It was just them, mother and daughter, both realizing what they'd lost long before the money. Michael lunged for the table, voice rising, but the bailiff stepped forward. Dorothy didn't flinch. She'd seen men unravel like this before. The lies always outpaced the liars eventually. Patricia's tears came quietly. She covered her mouth, shaking her head as if denying something only she could hear. Dorothy exhaled slowly, steady as the sea outside her childhood home. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because the truth matters. Because when people call a woman unstable, what they often mean is she remembers too much. Judge Walsh regarded her for a long moment, then nodded once. Case dismissed, she said. The gavel struck. The sound rang through the room like the final note of a song too long unfinished. Dorothy closed her briefcase and looked at her daughter, not with victory, but with something gentler. The kind of forgiveness that doesn't erase pain, only makes space for it. The courthouse emptied slowly, leaving behind the faint echo of shoes and murmurs. Dorothy waited until the last of the reporters filed out before gathering her papers. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, turning the dust in the air gold. It was the kind of light that made endings feel like beginnings if you stood still long enough. Patricia lingered by the doorway, her face pale, her confidence gone. She looked younger now, stripped of the armor of anger. Dorothy walked toward her, the silence stretching like a fragile thread between them. Mom, Patricia started, her voice breaking. I didn't know about the transfers. I swear, Dorothy placed a hand on her daughter's arm. I know, she said softly. You believed what you needed to believe. So did I. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise of the city hummed faintly beyond the glass, the sound of a world still moving, indifferent to their small war. I can't fix what I did, Patricia whispered. Dorothy nodded. Then don't try to fix it. Just learn from it. And be kinder to yourself next time you decide who to trust. Patricia's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step toward it. Outside, the courthouse steps glowed under the fading sun. Dorothy walked down them slowly, her heels clicking in rhythm with her breath. A breeze lifted her hair, carrying the smell of spring rain. She stopped halfway and looked back through the glass doors where Patricia still stood, watching her. There was no triumph, only relief, a quiet release that settled deep in her chest. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was fighting anyone. Dorothy reached into her bag and pulled out her old bar card. The edges were frayed, the ink faded. She smiled, not at the past, but at the proof that she'd never truly lost herself. She slipped it back into her purse. When she stepped into the sunlight, it caught her face just right, sharp lines softened, eyes clear. The laughter that once mocked her now felt distant, unimportant. She walked away without looking back. The thunder had already come and gone. All that remained was the quiet after the storm.